Hi, welcome to our Socratic Seminar. My name is Hannah.
I'm Gabi.
Jocelyn.
I'm Maya.
And I'm Jenna.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the first question. So the first question says, specifically related to the kindergarten centers and fifth grade reading videos, how does the teacher in kindergarten establish independence in learning centers? And how does that compare to how the fifth grade teacher does the same for guided reading, reader's workshop, or daily five? What do the two groups require, and how do the two age groups respond differently to this center station structure? Would anyone like to start?
I can. Okay, yeah. Okay, so during the kindergarten center, the student or the teacher establishes independence by allowing students to work in groups while the teacher is pulling like small groups to the table. Um, he does have a different transitional method than like the upper grades. Particularly in fifth grade, he discussed how he came from fifth grade to kindergarten, and that in fifth grade he would have like just reminders of what they needed to do during transitions. However, coming down to kindergarten, he discusses how he kind of demonstrates it with them and like goes through it with them. And he discusses how like he turns off the lights to get ready for transition. And then when they're switching centers, he uses a repeat after me song so they know like what to do and when to do it. And he also, like when they're cleaning up, he establishes the independence by giving students jobs once the center's over. So like one student collects papers and the others have a specific role of putting specific materials away and such. Anybody want to discuss about the fifth grade?
I thought that the
Sorry.
fifth grade teacher did a really good job with establishing independence in the classroom. She made sure that she taught exactly what was going to happen for those centers and how they should interact throughout those centers and what their expectations were. So I felt like that was really strong, and their independence remained throughout the full hour, she said, for the center time. So they had their exact jobs that they were doing and they moved through transitions with just a bell. And she also made sure to use positive reinforcement individually. So she didn't like tell the whole class like, I'm glad you're doing this. It was like she pointed out specific people to let them know that they are doing a good job with their independence. So that's what I found for fifth grade.
I
I
think
just have
going
a
off
small
of,
comment.
sorry.
Sorry. I was just
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
on the contrary, I was really shocked at how similar, honestly, I felt like it was. Really, for both of them, I feel like the kindergartners and the fifth graders required a lot of practice and modeling in like very
Mhm.
specific directions.
I
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Kind of just like going based off of what like Maya and Gabby said, that you could tell it really required like a lot of practice because they had like a lot of independence going on. And the fifth grade teacher, she talked about it a lot in her video, how she like spent like so much time going over exactly what they had to be doing. And then eventually once they got it was when she kind of went off and did her own thing, and then they were able to just like work independently.
Yeah, I agree. And I really liked how she did like model and practice it with the students. So that way they were able to like get the hang of it before they were just like thrown out on their own, I guess. And I also liked how they each knew their expectations, like if they had a question, what to do, if they needed to use the restroom, what to do. And I I felt like the kindergarten in the fifth grade were more different than similar in terms of like the transitions and the independence because I didn't really think the kindergarten was that independent. Like there were a few times when the students would come up to him while he was doing the small group and ask him questions and he would be like, "Give me a minute and I'll come answer you." But the fifth graders like they didn't even approach her with questions because they already knew their expectations and what to do, you know? So I really liked how she had modeled it and practiced it with them and gone through each scenario. I think that's something I would use in my classroom.
I think it's like good to point out the age difference though. So I think there was a lot of independence in both classrooms, just for what they could do as far as the age group goes. Like for kindergarten, repeating those steps, letting them know, like, okay, so you're gonna move from this table to this table. I feel like that's almost needed for that age group so that they stay on task and on track. But for fifth grade, after she modeled it and she figured out like, hey, they got this down, she didn't have to do that any longer because as fifth graders they were able to complete the task. So I think they both showed a lot of independence in different ways.
Okay, should we go on to the next question?
Yeah.
Sure. So the second question is, what are some of the preventative management techniques teachers must use in order for centers and stations to run smoothly, in order for a direct instruction / whole group / teacher-led lesson to run smoothly? Which strategies did you see in the videos or can infer from the videos based on students' ability to perform the task? And what transition strategies did you notice in each of the settings?
I think that one kind of like going back to what we had talked about in the first question, like you really need a lot of practice for the students to just like be more independent and for like your centers and stuff to run a lot smoothly. Like she was talking about like all the expectations that they needed and then all her rules, like you couldn't go up to her while she was doing her center. Like, you know, if you had a question or anything, like you like knew what to do because she had like a lot of practice with her students to do that.
I think along with the practice, and like direct, and specific directions, I also noted a lot of like things the two teachers or the four teachers did to prevent any type of unwanted behavior. Like I noticed in the kindergarten classroom, they did 2 bins, one for sharpened pencils and one for unsharpened pencils. And I don't know if you guys experienced it from placement, but lots of wanting to go sharpen their pencil. So I thought that was a really good idea that um it didn't interrupt any sort of instruction that was going on.
And
I
to add on, yeah, and to add on to like the practices and stuff, they do talk a lot about like establishing routines, especially with the whole group, and the direct instruction, especially in the one video where the first year teacher went to go see that professor at Columbia University. They talked about how they can prevent unwanted behaviors and stuff by establishing a routine, and some other ones she discussed were like movement around the classroom and breaking down tasks into like their smallest components. So like I think by having that routine, they know what to do, and it prevents unwanted behaviors and so on. Yes.
I think with like along with preventing unwanted behaviors, a lot of that has to do with keeping the students engaged and like interested in what they're learning. So it was in the third grade mental math lesson. I noticed that the teacher used a lot of turn and talks, which I personally like because I feel like it's an easy way for the kids to get more engaged and more enthusiastic. And I think kids always learn better when they hear from like others around them because it maybe gives them a new perspective on what they're learning. And so I think that's a good way to keep the students engaged to prevent those like unwanted interruptions in the class. And also, I think one of the ways that like a preventive strategy for the centers to run smoothly is having an effective transition. So I know that in the kindergarten video and the fifth grade video, they used a lot of transitions. Um, and I really liked how the kindergarten class used the song. I thought that was really cute. But yeah, so I think it's good to have like a good transition so that you keep your instructional time like on schedule and don't, because transitions can get chaotic. So it's good to have like a good, I keep saying that. It's good to have an effective transition to keep things running smoothly and on time.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, on my like individual questions, I wrote about that too. And I liked how the kindergarten teacher used like every minute, like even the transitions as academic time. Like he found a way to keep students engaged and on task and still stayed on task with the lesson. I thought that was really a good idea.
Okay.
Next question.
Read our next question. You good? Okay.
So
What are some?
oh. You want to read it?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
What are some of the preventative management techniques teachers must use in order for center/stations to run smoothly?
That's the one we just did.
Go to number 3.
Oh, sorry, y'all. Okay, here it is. What are some of the behavior management issues that arose in the videos or may come up in a whole group or direct instruction lesson, in a guided reading/centers lesson? How can those specific issues be handled?
I'll go ahead and start this one. So I feel like in the direct instruction video, we saw a lot of these issues. I mean, that's what she really wanted help with, was how to kind of control the classroom. So a couple things that she brought up on how she dealt with it, like there was one girl in the classroom that she had a specific nonverbal hand movement with to let her know that she needed to refocus and reset so that she could get back into the lesson. And I feel like that was great. I think that like just letting somebody know silently, so it's not in front of the whole class, that you recognize that they're not paying attention, and that you need them to get back on with the lesson. I feel like that was a really great way as far as managing behavior. I also liked how she just nonverbal in general, she used a lot of nonverbal cues, how she stood in front of the classroom. And we see this a lot. Like I saw it in my placement classroom all the time. When kids just don't stop talking, they're just, very, very, very social, you stop talking. And that like lets them know that they're missing something. So I feel like that was also a good behavior management like skill, just learning when as a teacher you need to stop trying so hard to get them to stop talking and let them take a nonverbal cue.
Yeah, I had said about the nonverbal cues too, and I said because like it like besides like when you like just stop talking, but if you were to like when she was doing like the hand signals with her students, like it doesn't take her time away from instruction because she can just like keep on going. But it's just like she's non-verbally going to them and like, trying to get them to like focus back. So I said that was a really good one because I mean you're not taking away from your instruction, you're just kind of redirecting them.
Mm-hmm. And to add on, sorry.
No, go ahead.
To add on to that, so for the direct instruction, in the classroom management tips video, we can see her like walking around the classroom. I think that's a great technique to let the students know that you are aware of what they're doing, because you can be teaching something in the front of the class and then the students can be in the back of the class not listening. So I think walking around and maybe making eye contact with the students while you're walking around lets them know that you're aware and you're not blind, so they know that you can see them and what they're doing. I think that's a good way to minimize disruptive behavior as well.
Yeah, and opposed to just the cues, I liked how they discussed how to keep like student engagement, and I focused more on the strategies of using like games and competition within the classroom, because and you can see in the video that you can like that really kept the students engaged, and that it didn't give them a chance to like misbehave. She also talked a lot about how that breaking down tasks into their smallest components, that helped keep them engaged, because there wasn't like a moment that they didn't have anything to do. So that prevented from them having the time to like sit and doze off and like do these behaviors. So having something to do at all times, with less repetition of like previous assignments, it really kept the students engaged in the lesson, and prevented them from misbehaving.
I wanted to also, sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
I also wanted to mention positive reinforcement. I feel like we see that, I see it constantly at our placement school. Positive reinforcement, how well it works. In the 5th grade video, the teacher used it during her guided reading / centers time. She, if she rang the bell and kids weren't paying attention, she used positive reinforcement to let them know, hey, this is what you're supposed to be paying attention to. So she said things like, oh, I love how so-and-so is getting their center packed up quietly so that they can move. Or she just used positive reinforcement to let them know that although their behavior is not necessarily disruptive, they're also not paying attention to what's going on. So I feel like that's a must-have, is positive reinforcement, and it works really well with kids.
And to mention the centers, because it says direct instruction and centers lesson, I think that an issue that could come up during class centers is the students playing or like being off task. So I think a good way is like in the 5th grade video, how they practice everything and modeled it, and then she let them go off on their own. I think that was a good way to minimize the like chances of them becoming distracted or off task, because they're used to the routine, so they know what they should be doing. Yeah. And then in the kindergarten video, I liked how each person had a job. I can't remember who was saying that earlier, but that was a good way to keep them from being off task. And I think they were earning like money.
Yeah.
So that also kept like was a positive reinforcement to keep them on task and less distracted. Does anyone want to add anything else? Okay, so question 4 is, how effective do you think each of these teachers were in managing the lesson and students? So I guess we can start off with, which teacher did you find the most effective?
I thought the 5th grade teacher did a really good job with like how she managed everything. But again, I think it all just goes back to how much time you spend on practice, because you could tell she spent like a lot of time on it. So I thought she did the best.
I was really impressed by the kindergarten teacher. Yeah, they probably needed a little bit more assistance, but seeing like kindergarten in our placement compared to kindergarten in that video, I was like, wow, like, he really like kept them interested and on task, and I was really impressed by how independent they were.
I was surprised with how well they responded to the turning off the lights, because I feel like whenever you like try to do it, they just go even crazier when you turn off the lights. So I was surprised, like when he did it, they were actually all quiet.
Yeah.
With the classroom management tips video, I thought that the teacher was effective in her classroom management in the beginning. Like she tried to be with walking around the classroom, the nonverbal cues, all of that we were talking about. But I really liked seeing her transition after she had the conversation with the expert in classroom management, and she gave her some tips, and I loved seeing how she implemented those tips with the games, the positive reinforcements, adding more material into the lesson like Jenna said. I really enjoyed watching her grow, as especially as a first year teacher, because as a first year teacher I thought she was doing really well at the beginning, but then after that she did even more well. And it was a nice thing to see her kind of reflect on herself and watch her lessons back, so she was able to identify the mistakes that she was making and the ways that she could change them.
I want to mention the third grade teacher. I feel like watching that video, you could tell that she knew what she was doing. Like she like had some years under her belt for sure. And you just watch like the kids during turn and talk. As soon as it's over, they were paying attention, like they were engaged again. And throughout the entire video, the kids are paying attention. Their eyes are glued on her, and they don't they raise their hand in order to speak. They don't shout answers out. I feel like she just, as far as managing a lesson, she did really well. Like the kids were engaged and they were paying attention, and she didn't have to like redirect anybody even after turn and talk, because I feel like turn and talk sometimes can get out of hand. Some kids, they don't want to come back. So I feel like she did really well as far as managing her lesson.
And
Yeah, I agree with that.
one
Sorry.
thing I want to add about her is that I saw that during the turn and talk, she was turning and talking with one of the students. And I thought that was really cool and a good thing that I could implement.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line when it comes to like you want your students to share, because I do believe that that really encourages engagement and it keeps them more interested in their learning. But like Maya was saying, they don't want to stop talking sometimes. So I found it very like, I thought she very successfully like knew how to do it and made sure that they were still on task, but gave them that opportunity to take a break and talk to their friend and make learning more fun.
I also want to add to her. I also noticed how she used nonverbal cues for her students to answer the questions. Like she placed the hands on their chest. So like when they had the answer to the question, they would give her a thumbs up to prevent from like distracting any of the other students from solving the question themselves. And yeah, I really liked that she had that. That's not a distraction for them.
Yeah. I wrote in my individual questions, I wrote about her classroom management. I said that I wanted to see more of her like strategies for classroom management, less than her teaching mental math, but more of like a this is how I manage my classroom, just because it was so good. Like I want to see how she got her students that engaged and that involved in the lesson with her, because hats off to her.
She did it very gracefully. Like she had a lot of patience. Like you could tell between the direct instruction video or the classroom tips video, between her face, like she was visually stressed out and exhausted, versus the third grade teacher. She looked like it was so easy for her. Like it just came very naturally, which I think is a good skill to have.
I think that also comes with experience too.
Yeah, for sure.
Does anyone want to add anything else? Okay, question 5. What kinds of differences have you seen in your placement classrooms regarding management of direct instructions lessons versus learning centers and stations? I can start.
Okay.
So, for me, in my placement classrooms, I was in a second grade class this past 6 weeks. And during the learning centers and stations, my mentor teacher would have like a little list, I guess, on the board, which listed the group or the center that each table was going to, and then the names under it. But the thing is, she kept it the same every week. Like the centers would change, but the groups and the um, way they transitioned were the same. So it was kind of the same like modeling and practicing thing that the fifth grade teacher had done. And I found that super effective, because the kids, when they would go to their next center, they would already know what supplies they need, where they were going in the classroom, who they would be with. So I thought that I really loved seeing my mentor teacher do that.
I had written, I wrote that I honestly didn't see that many differences. Like I saw a lot of similarities as far as transitions, like bells. That's what I've seen in both of my placement classrooms. They both used bells in order to transition. And right before it started, they kind of went over, like, y'all remember what you're doing, where you're going. It's the same thing they always do. But they outlined it again, and that set the kids free. I mean, I was in a kindergarten classroom this past 6 weeks, and even with the way she did it, the kids, like students, still knew where they were going and what they were doing. It was very rare that they came up to the table and asked any questions. It's a younger age, but I feel like she managed it very well in a way that the students were aware of what they were doing, just because she reiterated what they were supposed to be doing right before it started.
I didn't write about this, but it made me think about it, and it was a difference, and I've seen that it like worked really well with ours. And we were in my kindergarten placement, we've been doing like a holidays around the world. So like you're learning about different holidays, and then they would like talk about the holiday that you were doing, and then you'd watch a little video, and then we would go off into like small groups and do like your passport and like color it and write about what you learned in the video. And then you would come back to the carpet and like learn about something else that they did in that holiday, and then you'd go back into like your table groups and do a craft. So I thought like I saw that they like were really engaged, because it was kind of like you did your whole lesson, and then you went off into like little groups and kind of like did your own thing, and then you went again back into like whole group, and then again was like into like their craft and stuff. So I thought just kind of like breaking it up and allowing that like break time of where they like do something fun, that it kind of helped to like keep them really engaged and like not have like behavior issues, you know?
Yeah. All right, are y'all ready to move to the next one?
Do it. We have 8 minutes left.
Perfect. Okay. So Gabby, we'll start with your question.
Okay. So we kind of already answered my question, but maybe we can change it a little if we want to.
Okay.
My question was, which teacher do you believe displayed the most effective classroom management, and why?
Okay, I can start with that one. Because I didn't speak on the 5th grade teacher. I do believe she had the best classroom management, in my opinion, just because you could tell through the video her students had like a ton of practice, and that she was very confident in herself and her strategies, as opposed to the new teacher. And I know that comes with time, but the new teacher like didn't seem to have that much confidence in her strategies. That way they didn't seem like they were as effective as the 5th grade teacher, who did know like I know that this works for me and that my students can comprehend what I'm trying to get across. But to me, she had the best strategy.
I'll add to that, just because back to the 3rd grade teacher, I feel like with the 5th grade teacher, she did amazing, and she would definitely be first as far as what we've seen, because we didn't get to see that much with the 3rd grade teacher. But I think just seeing the one lesson that 3rd grade teacher did, you can tell her confidence as well. Like she was very confident in her lesson and the way she approached it, and the way she directed her kids when she was teaching the lesson. I think she did a really good job at showing that she had great classroom management. Like it shows through the kids, and it shows through her confidence for sure.
Are you guys ready
One
for
of the
the
transition questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anna, do you want to read yours, or do you want me to read mine?
Either or, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so I had said in the kindergarten video, they talked about their transition and how long it was. So how could you like shorten your transition and make it more effective?
Well, I noticed that when in the kindergarten video, he was getting advice from an expert, and the expert was saying like, sit back and watch and like see what the kids are doing. Because if you're there helping them, you're so focused on getting it to the next thing, you're not sitting back and being like, Sally has been playing with her marker instead of actually transitioning like she's supposed to. So I think sitting back and seeing where the problem's at and then trying to find a solution rather than trying to jump in right away.
I agree with that. And about the song thing, I felt like the song was effective to a point, but at the same time, I felt like he could have just turned the lights off and that would have been just as effective, you know? I feel like maybe one time singing the song and then getting them in the routine of, okay, we turn the lights off, we move to shorten that transition time. I think that would have helped a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hannah. I think maybe just choosing one transition so that it doesn't like take as much time.
Yeah, because they did discuss how the professional timed the transition and it was like 4 minutes long. And I would agree, like he could do the song once and then like the students should know, and you could give verbal like reminders like once the lights turn off and I give you the signal, you go. Rather than doing all the different transitions in one, he could have just focused on maybe just flipping the lights off and giving verbal reminders.
I have a question to add to that for you guys. I kind of thought that doing the song turned the transition into more academic time. Do you guys not agree with that?
I mean, I think it did, but I also felt like at a certain point it becomes kind of overkill, you know,
That's true.
depending on how many times you're transitioning, because we also don't see if it's only during that like specific lesson that he's using that transition or if he's using that all day, you know?
That's true.
I think going off of
I
that,
also
Go ahead, sorry.
I thought it was cool. His transition song was like about what they were doing in their small group. Like it was about pennies. Like, and I felt if he switched that song depending on what they were learning that day, that would almost be more academic time, I think. If it
That's
was like
how I took it too.
you think like if he did like a little jingle to go along with whatever they were learning that day, I definitely think students learn very well through songs, and I've seen it a lot in my placement classrooms that was like exactly the way these students learned, and it was great. They sang all of their numbers and like that's how they learned. So I almost feel like it is maybe overkill, but if he only does it during that one time for transition, I feel like it's almost more time for them to learn. It's not like killing their time.
Yeah, I don't think it's taking away from their instruction. I think it's a part of it almost.
Right.
And they did discuss, like, he did say how long it was, like, as the whole 4 minutes, but he used the whole 4 minutes for something like academic because that song did relate to what they had been doing. But also, like, if you were trying to shorten it, he could just focus on the song, or he could just focus on the lights off, or he could even use the song as like a warm up and a closure too. But I do think that that was a very like it related to the academics of the lesson. So I thought that was good.
yeah, I agree. I think I would have rather just done the song and then like you could make it shorter, but still have just done the song because I mean it was academics, and I think especially with like kindergarten, they just do better when there's like a song going on.
Definitely.
All right, well, we have a minute left. Any last thoughts?
I think so.
Great job, everyone.
Yeah.